All right. Greetings, everybody. I just came out of makeup. All right, time to get serious. Time to get serious. Monday. Let's see. I should know the date. Monday, March 14th. Almost halfway. Tomorrow will be halfway. 1 month out from my birthday. All right, we got somebody in. The cleric's with us. Right on. Right up your alley, the cleric. We're going to be talking about getting our soils ready for spring, getting them ready. And I want to talk about some of the things that we can do now. What's been going on around here today? Let's see. I had a conference with my son on the direction of the farm. Me, my son, my daughter-in-law, and my wife. And that was quite productive. That was at 12:30. I also, this morning, I had to repair some hoses, which was pretty good, just so we could get water out to the calves. I can take it out by bucket, but it takes all day long. And our hoses had gotten kinked in several spots so badly that we just weren't able to do it anymore. So yeah, the cleric, if I can come to your workshop day about preparing, I'm going to. I would like to. I think that would be really fun, and I want to see your place. And I know you put a lot of work into it, and I would like to do that, and then come back and report to the tribe on what all went on there. But for those of you that don't know, Beth and Tommy are going to be putting on a preparing your. Maybe you can throw it up on the tribe, Beth. It's going to be preparing for your spring garden. You know, preparing your soil. So this is, wherever you're at, you can always increase what you're doing with your soils. And if you haven't started, this is a good place to start, how to get it going. So around here today, let's see. Oh, and I've been doing some woodwork too. I had to put up a whole bunch of shelves in the curing room area. There's like an airlock before you get into the curing room, and I had to get it organized so we could get all of the dry goods on the shelf organized, so we know what we have. And there was a lot of stuff we didn't need there anymore, empty stuff that just needed to go away. Okay, well, I appreciate that. Keith is with us. Sean's with us. Inga's with us. All right. It says we only got 2 people watching. That's kind of weird, because the cleric and Keith and Sean and Inga, that's 4, right? And I'm here. So, all right. So also what happened today was, I think it was about 15 days since we processed those beef, and the loins were put in the cooler, and today the last of them got cut up. So Jill and Frank did that. They took the loin muscles off the bone and made them boneless, and they were beautiful. And I'm having 1 or 2 after I get done here. So I probably won't be going too long because I'm pretty hungry. I did some organizing in my wood shop. I have brought home a lot of 1-inch board, and that's going to be used for the projects that we got going around here this summer. But I have to bring it home, and then I have to get it stacked and stickered. And when you sticker it, if you don't know what that is, we cut pieces of wood that are about a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch, or 3/4 by a 1/2 usually. And in between courses of boards, as you're stacking them up, you put one of those you divide the board in thirds, and you place those so that there's a space in between each course of boards so that the air can circulate through there. And what you want, it's sort of like curing meat in a way. You need the wood to dry, but you want it to dry evenly. So if they're stacked against each other, they'll just dry around the edges, and then you get warping. So you want it to be, and you want the weight distributed so that they dry evenly too. And we don't hit it with a whole lot of heat. We want it just to dry kind of on its own. When we build with these, they will still be quite wet, and then they will dry in place. You can't have it too wet, but there again, we're not building furniture, so it'll be okay. It'll be fine. I got my little heater here, and just about every night I start, I have to adjust it. Almost every night, because the dogs lay under here and they knock it over and change the settings on it. But anyway, I did that. Stacking wood takes a long time, but it's. I feel like I'm counting $10 bills every time I put one on the stack. If you haven't seen the videos that I made about that, I buy this wood from a sawyer. He's a guy that saws, a sawyer, and he gets raw logs and he buys them wherever he can find them. And so sometimes he's got some really interesting stuff. But for building materials, I usually just use pine. And he sells it to me unstickered for 60 cents a board foot. So the way that you calculate a board foot would be a board that is 1 inch thick and 12 inches by 12 inches. That would be a board foot. So if it's a 2-inch board and it's 12 by 12, that's $1.20. But a linear foot that's 12 inches wide and 1 inch thick would be 60 cents. So the wood that I got today, or that I picked up Friday, they were 8-inch boards, and each board was about $2.60 something cents. And we figured with transport and all that stuff, we're looking at about $2.75 a board. And they're 8 feet long. And when we match them up with the closest thing that's available at the lumber yard, of course, we don't get rough cut from the lumber yard. It would be plain. It's almost 13 bucks. You know, it's like $10 more. So you really can't afford to do this now if you're buying lumber from the lumber yard. I mean, if you're going to build a house, let's say, and pay those exorbitant prices, but you're building it for somebody and they say, build it anyway, I need a house to live in, and they're going to borrow the money to do it, and then, you know, contractors are still going, they're still working. But for the home guy that, you know, the homesteader especially, I can't throw a ton of money at building, because then I wouldn't have money for the other things that we need to do that make money. So we have to balance it out. And this is a really good way to do that when you have to build stuff, is to build with rough cut. I mean, I love it. I like to see a lot of rough cut around the farm. It might not look good at the boathouse, you know, up on the lake, you know, it might not look so good there, but around the farm, I think it really looks good. I personally like rough cut wood. I think it looks good. I think it smells good. I like the feel of it when I'm working with it. I like the way the sawdust, you know, comes off. It's my kind of stuff. I build a lot of stuff with it, but you know, I'm like that. I discover something and then I do a lot with it, and then I'll discover something else, and hey, look at this. I never thought about this. Look at this. So there's so much out there. It's really, it boggles the mind sometimes how we ever get stuck in a rut. I got to share something with you guys. I wasn't sure I was going to do this, but I'm feeling pretty good. All right, Abundant Living is with us. Right on. Nancy Dort is with us from Canada, and Thomas Leland's with us. Notice how I say Canada. C-A. C, eh? How about an N, eh? What about a D, eh? Oh, Canada. That's a Newfie joke. I don't know if you make fun of Newfoundlanders over where you are, Nancy, but I used to live right on the border of New Brunswick, and I had a lot of friends over there, and they made fun of Newfies, something terrible. Wow. Like over here, we make fun of people from North Dakota. But the New Brunswickers, they make fun of Newfies. It's terrible. It's terrible. I actually met a Newfie when I was in the Goofy Newfies, yeah. When I was in the Air Force, and I went on a training to a base in Florida. It was a 10-day training, and it sucked. It was one of them trainings that absolutely sucks. Florida sucks because it's so hot in the summertime. Yeah, I know. And anyway, I was down on this trainer, and the first couple days were classroom, and then it was like 4 days of suckedness, and then another couple days of classroom. And the first day of the second 2 days of classroom, my pinky was totally numb, and it was bigger than my thumb. And my hand was kind of getting numb too. Didn't hurt, it was just numb and tight and really tight. So I said something to the instructor about it, is like, do I need to be concerned about this? And he says, oh, you best get over to the infirmary right now. And so I went to see the first sergeant of the camp. He happened to be a Newfie. We were talking. I said, hey, you're Canadian, aren't you? And he says, yeah. I said, whereabouts you from? He says, Newfoundland. Newfoundland. That's how they. And I said, you're a Newfie. And he says, yep, I am. And man, did we hit it off good. I told him a couple of my Newfie jokes. But anyway, I had gotten bit by a scorpion, they figured. And it can be bad. And they took me to the infirmary, actually the hospital. And I got to get out of my gross clothes that I had on. They were just totally gross. And put on nice, nothing underneath, but just like clean stuff. And I got to get in a hospital bed. It was cool in there. And I got a couple meals, and I got to stay overnight. And the next day they said, you can go. Your stuff is cleaned. They sent my camis to the wherever. And so I had clean stuff to put on, even my socks and my undies. No, we didn't wear undies back then. And they said, well, you can go back to your unit. And I said, I don't know. I'm still feeling it. But I had been getting bit by a scorpion. And guess what they treated me with? They treated me with I can't remember now. I can't remember. It's something really common, but just a pretty high dose. I didn't get an IV or anything like that. They just gave it to me orally, and then they wanted to check on me every single hour while I was in there, but the nurse was really nice, so I didn't mind it too much. All right. John Bates is with us, and Ben Carlson is with us. Right on. All right, we're going to have a good time here tonight. I have been working with my sons. We're working on a project. We've been making biochar for we've been here 18 years. So I would say we've been making it for 12 years, as long as we've been doing Mangalitsa pigs. We started doing biochar before we got Mangalitsa pigs, before. And I started doing it. I read an article in a Mother Earth News magazine. I don't get it anymore. We got it for a long time, and then it just stopped coming, and I don't know, nobody re-upped it, so we just don't get it anymore. I had a lot of old ones that I found in an old house out in Montana one time. I had a whole stack of them from, you know, way back. Like, I think they were from the 70s, actually. And so I used to read Mother Earth News all the time. I even went to a conference. I actually spoke at a conference. I did a pig cut up at a conference. Me and my son Joe carried in half a pigs in, and we cut them up for a 1 hour class. It was pretty neat. But that's where I first heard about biochar, and I made it, and okay, it sounded pretty good. And then there was a guy in town that heard that biochar was the next thing, that there was going to be a lot of money in biochar. And this guy was really into quick schemes, he was always into that stuff. And him and I became friends. He wanted to start up basically an outfit like we have going with Anyone Can Farm, but he lost interest in that. He lost interest in biochar too. He did hire a couple people to come out from New England, from an outfit called New England Biochar. And they came out on a consulting basis. And this guy that I was working for, he was using me as the technical guy. I was the one that was going to build the equipment. And I agreed to it. I thought it was a good idea. I never really thought there was that much money in it, but there could be. And I'm going to kind of get into that a little bit. Like, some people may want to get into this on the same basis that we've gotten into it. And it is a nice facet on the farm. You do make a gain with biochar, whether you're using it. And I'm going to talk about all the different ways that we can use it, that we do use it, and where I've had good luck with it. And we haven't had bad luck with it, I'll put it that way. And then selling it, because you do have to gather up the wood. You have to have the retort, it's called. So you have to build it. I don't think you can buy them. And then you have to operate it. It has to be tended. And when it's done, you pull out this right here. This is biochar. This was a solid piece of wood. Now it's really light. It has an interesting characteristic to it. It's almost kind of musical. Another piece. They're all slightly different. But this piece right here, I can tell you from looking at it, is complete. It is high quality, and it will break very easily. Yep, and make a mess. So it shatters pretty easy. It's charcoal. It differs from charcoal slightly in that when we create it in an oxygen deprived, oxygen negative environment. See? Okay. And we want to talk about why biochar, why it is an enhancing ingredient, and where it's applied and all of that. But the overall view is we in the farming business, I heard this today. I listened to quite a few things on the internet today about soils. And one of the things that I heard a fellow say was, there's a saying in the farming community, and I have heard this too myself, that we grow soils. Like, we don't grow plants, we grow soils, right? And the antithesis to growing soils would be to supplement soils. We supplement soils. So we don't actually have soil. Let's say we have just sand, and we put nutrients into that soil to, oh, it's a puppy dragging things around out there, to use as a grow medium. But that's not what we really do in this business. What we are into is regeneration, right? We want our soils to be, in a word, regenerative. So what do I mean about regenerative? Okay, the best example that I know of is this hand right here. Is this the hand that I had when I was 4 years old? Nah, obviously not. Is there anything there that was there when I was 4 years old? I'd say no. I'd say no. I don't know as I can exactly prove that, but I remember when I look at my grandson's hand at 2 years, let's say 2 years old, it looks nothing like this hand, right? So there's parts of this creation here, this body, that get old and break off, slough off, and they're replaced with new stuff. This is a really deep subject, and wow. So the human body, for instance, is regenerative. So it's not like the one that I was born with, like a pair of sneakers, is going to last 94 years. That's not it. I mean, I don't have the same body when I'm born as when I'm 61 years old. It's a different one. And when I'm 91 years old, it will be a different one. It will have all the cells individually have been swapped out with new ones, right? So it regenerates itself to a point. You can't cut an arm off and hope that it will grow back. It's not that type of regeneration, right? Not like a salamander's tail. When you cut a salamander's tail off or pull it off, it'll grow back, right? It's not like that. And everybody knows that, right? But the soils are different. We can deplete soils. I could take a soil sample in here if I brought in a coffee can full of really nice, rich soil from outside, and then I abused it to the point where I absolutely killed everything in it. Let's say that I steamed it. Let's say that I ran steam through it at 212 degrees steam, and I ran it through there all night. In the morning, we could look at that under the microscope, and I dare say we wouldn't find anything alive in there at all. I can't be sure because I've never actually done it, but I'm just saying that there is microbiological life. I'm going to keep this simple. I listen to guys today that get into such detail that it was like way over my head, but I thought, I don't think I even need to know that, because a consistent takeaway that I got about soils was, get your hands off of it. Let it do its thing. It doesn't need you. Learn as much as you can and see where you can help out here and there. But if you don't know anything, just take your hands off it. And let's just look at nature and how that works, right? So that was a common denominator. So I just don't feel as though we need to go into like huge detail. It's sort of like, I look at my body and I know it's regenerative. I know it is. So do I need to know everything there is to know about this, to know that it's regenerative? No, I don't. I don't. I know it's just, it works. It was working really well before I even knew it was working well, right? And I've over the years I've learned some stuff works better than others to make the performance of my body better than other things, right? So I've kind of figured that out. But I don't need to go get my doctorate in biology for what I'm doing. I don't think I do. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I do. So anyway, there's an awful lot of noise out there. I'm gonna just close this door. Okay. And people are living their lives out there. So when we start talking soils, this is my approach. I mean, I listen to some really astute people on podcasts today. I don't normally listen to a lot of homesteader channels, but I did find one today that I really liked. And I'll have to look at that. My phone is not in here, so I'll have to look at that, and I'll share that with you because I liked it. It's a woman. She looks to be about 35 years old, and I liked her approach to things. She wasn't like a college professor just reiterating things. She was keeping it simple, and it looks like this is how you do it. I like that. It was a very discovering approach to things, and I think that's how I'd like to be. I'd like to tell you, well, there's some things that I know, and as I was listening to her, I thought, what do I really know? And I thought, well, I know the measurement of this shelf, because if it's the wrong measurement, it won't fit in between these two walls. I know that. But a lot of the things that I claim to know about biochar, it's stuff that I've read, so I don't have an electron microscope, and but there are things that I do know about this because I've used it a lot. We've been making this for a long time, and I will give you examples of places that we've used it and the results of it. Of course, I could be making the whole thing up and you guys wouldn't know. So when we start talking soils, we want to talk about regeneration. So let's say I brought that coffee can of soil in, nice, rich, dark soil. I brought it in and I absolutely dried it out, let's say, and then I heated it up and I killed everything in it. And then if I try to grow something in it, it's not going to respond. If I put life in, like say I put a seedling in there, it's not going to respond the same as if I had really healthy, rich, living soil and I put a seedling in there, right? I think we would all agree on that. So with a dead soil, I guess if you want to make stuff grow in it, then you're going to have to put, an input in there, like a fertilizer or a feed in there. Well, I don't think we really want to do that because we want our soils to be regenerating their nutrient value, right? Their nutrients available to the plants that we grow in them. And I know that I am mostly a livestock guy, but we do grow a lot for our livestock, and we've made some real neat discoveries along the way growing for our livestock. So, okay, so that soil that we've killed, can we regenerate that soil? I would say yes. And I would say if we took, 20% of it out of that coffee can, and then we put 20% fresh stuff from out on a fence row in that coffee can, kept it moist, and allowed the microbiology that's in the 20% we put in to propagate in a given period of time, we would have a coffee can full of live soil again, right? It would regenerate, right? So the organisms that are in that soil that we've killed are not going to come back to life necessarily, or not. They're not going to come back to life. Once you kill them, they're dead. They're just like anything else. Once it's dead, it's dead. Now, going dormant is a different thing. In the wintertime, I thought about bringing some soil in, but every place it was hard, I couldn't get at it. Is the soil dead? No, it's frozen. It's dormant right now, right? It's not dead. Maybe at the highest levels, right at the top, could be. There could be some death going on at the top levels. But then when you get down in, it's not frozen solid, and the level of microbiology, the die-off rate is less. So we want our soils as well as our bodies to be regenerative. We want actually everything to be regenerative. We want our relationships to be regenerative. We want everything to be able to grow back. We want everything to be able to take a licking, but then come back. And right there, I'm just going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole. And this might worry some of you about my mental health, but that's okay. The other day, I was listening to my mystic friend, Janine, Tarot by Janine. She's an Albertan. I just really like her. And I think she's got good horse sense, as well as, the other things that she does, like reading tarot cards and stuff. I don't know anything about that. I used to hear it's just evil and all that stuff, but I don't know. She doesn't seem like an evil gal. But I do listen to her once in a while. And she was interviewing somebody, and they were talking about the regenerative nature of humankind and the possibility, get this, that human beings could live longer than they do right now. And the reason that human beings don't live as long as they could live, or even used to live, for those of you that fancy the Bible, you get back in there and some of those people were living a long time. And we just think, oh yeah, that's the Bible, and the Bible has the Garden of Eden and, Noah's Ark and all that stuff. But so we choose to believe some things out of it, but other things, it's kind of like, yeah, hey, living 450 years, come on, can't do that. And then we find out that, hey, we're living longer today than people were in the 1940s. And gee, in the 40s, things were better then, right? So I got to thinking about that, and I believe that mankind is regenerative. It must be, right? Because I am not the last baker to be born. There's going to be one born in a few months. My son Joe's wife is going to be having a baby. And so we're regenerating. We regenerate as a species. So here's where it gets a little weird. She said, and the guest agreed, maybe the guest brought it up. I don't really recall, because when I first heard it, I was kind of like, well, that's not why I'm listening to the show. But said something about we may live longer than our parents did. And the reason for that is that there has been a lot of poor information that's been given to us about our health and about our longevity. Very poor information. And the information that's probably the worst is the average age of an American human being is, let's say, it's 76 years old. And so you set in your mind that I'm going to live to right around 76 years old. Or in my case, I've always thought, well, I'm very much like my father, and he lived to be 94, so that probably make 94. And you think along those lines, and you think, yeah, but when I'm 80, I'm going to start just mowing the lawn, and that's all I'm doing. So sure enough, You think that, and when you get to be 80, that's all you think you can do. You have aches and pains when you're 60, and you think, oh, I guess this is just the way it is. But then all of a sudden you go on a carbohydrate free diet, and all of a sudden it's gone, and you can think. You don't have neck pain, you don't have shoulder pain. It's all gone. And you feel like, hey, I think I'll go swim in a nice cold water. I mean, there is a regenerative nature to this human body. And you got to ask the question, well, what is it that makes it peter out at 76 years old? What is that? Is that because I have been preparing myself to end my life at 76 years old? Or in my case, 94 years old? Is that it? Or is really that's all this really lasts? I am starting to wonder about that. And anyway, these people were saying that we will probably live a lot longer because a lot of the technologies for health and wellness have been, kept from us. And I can kind of believe that. I mean, we just went through this whole thing, and you look back and you say, hey, wait a minute, you mean ivermectin, they made fun of it because it's horse dewormer. That will cure the Wu flu. And I mean, everybody knows now that, yeah, a protocol of that and several other things will knock it right out of you. We used it here. But the mainstream media was saying, oh, don't do that. Oh, don't do that. Even the people at Tractor Supply, when you go in there to buy it, they'll say, yeah, but don't take this. Don't take this. You didn't care 2 years ago what I did with it, right? I mean, it wasn't under lock and key 2 years ago. It was one of those things you just go in and get it, right? And they wouldn't question it when you were at the register. But now, horse dewormer. Oh, don't take that, right? So anything else at Tractor Supply, if I want to buy it and put it in my mouth, they don't care. But if I want to buy ivermectin, apple flavored ivermectin that you use to squirt in a horse's mouth to deworm them, or pig or anything else, they're like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. We don't want to be held accountable, because it could, So the thought that things could have been kept from us, do you think that's plausible? And especially things that could extend the life of people. You think so? I kind of do. I just got a feeling about that. I get the feeling like when we live in town and the people who run the Department of Public Works put fluoride in the drinking water in town. And you ask them why. Oh, it's so you don't get cavities. Well, how come, the dentist's office is doing record business these days? Oh, well, that's because of Mountain Dew and other stuff like that. But I thought you said that the fluoride keeps us from getting cavities. Well, that's what they tell me. I'm just doing my job. See, so then you can do a little research on fluoride and say, well, you don't want to be putting that in your body. But when you question it, it's like, well, why would they do that? But you see what I'm saying? There is a lot of information that when you bring it up, it's like, somebody will take a swing at you with a shovel if you bring it up. If you bring up, flat Earth, for instance, whoa, oh no, we ain't gonna have that discussion. So when I started to consider this over the weekend, this was last week I heard this, but I've been thinking about it, and she said something like, we may have 200 years, people in our range. And I like that. I like the sound of that. Right off, I thought, oh man, I would love that. Instantly, I would love that. I would love to live 200 years, and it would be spaced out. So you'd be like 50 years old for, 75 years, because you'd be at that age of of development. I mean, everything works, digestion, bones, everything works really well. You'd be running strong for that middle chunk. Like now, age, 20 through 70, if you have taken care of yourself, you can expect to have a good quality of life through that. Most people, right? I would, whatever, give or take. But just think, if you did go 200 and age 20 through 190, you were just right there. I mean, you're still doing everything that you love to do. Everything that you love to do, you can still do. Instead of, you get to be 60 and you're like, oh, gee, I got 10 years before I'm 70. And, I see 70-year-olds that just, they're in terrible shape. And Jill and I were talking about somebody that we know that hit 75 and started giving his stuff away and started just kind of sitting and spending a lot of time, just sort of like playing the part of a guy that's within 5 years of the end of his life. He actually playing the part, and it looks that way too when you see him across the room. It's somebody that me and Jill know pretty good, and it's like, this doesn't seem right, and other folks have noticed too, because this guy is like pretty vivacious and goofy and always kidding around and stuff. Still walks straight and carries a good conversation on. And from my point of view, you feel like kicking them in their rear end and say, get out of that rocking chair. I got work for you to do. So when I started thinking about this, the regenerative nature of our body, and then here's somebody gives me the possibility that I might live to 200 years old, and all of a sudden I like that. I'm going to think about that. And when I think about it, I like the thought of that. It's kind of like Haven says, prepare for the worst, or hope for the best, prepare for the worst. All right. Okay, I can do that. Hope for the. Now, I would want to get my stuff done that needs to get done in the time, if it's worst case scenario, and I'm not going to make it past 94. Worst case scenario. But best case scenario, and I make it to 200. I may have a fleet of school buses that I've outfitted myself, something like that. I went into the lumberyard today. Just a little side note. This is going to be a week-long talk about soils, because, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. We come from the soil. We are going to return to the soil. So I think there's a lot to talk about here, and a lot of understanding to have here as we are going into spring. And this spring's different, right? Last spring was different than the one before, yeah. And next spring might be even different than this one. Of course it will. But this one, I believe that there's more of a sense of urgency at this point. There is for me, and that last year there was a sense of urgency, and I think this year there should be even more sense of urgency. We all can do this. We all can do this. And if we've decided that we're going to do this, okay, now's the time. So anyway, I go into the lumberyard this morning, and I'm hearing the two guys talk at the front. I've known these guys for a long time. Not well, but I buy stuff in there, hardware and lumber and paint and all this stuff for a long time. I'm in there twice a week. Hey, how you doing? We know a little bit about each other. If you're going to buy something from the warehouse, they walk out there with you, and you get it, load it in your truck or whatever. So you small talk, a little bit about them. I know where their kids work and stuff like that. Anyway, so I'm getting my stuff. I'm over hearing what they're talking about, and I walk up there, and instead of, honestly, I had to get some little collars to join water lines up, and instead of getting one package, there was 25 pieces in it. It was $11.90 a package. I thought, if I'm going to lift to 200, I'm going to get 2 packages. And it made sense. At that moment, it made sense to me to do it. But if I'm only going to live till I'm 94, and I'm only really functional until I'm like 75, one package will take me there, for the amount of water lines that I do. That may be not a good example because I do a lot of water lines actually, but this particular size of water line, I really don't do that many. This is for joining up hose repairs. But I go up there to the front and I said, in 30 seconds, I need to know if I could offer you life as you know it now until age 200, would you take it or no? And one guy, he responded the way I thought he would. And he said, no. And I could see that. I could see it, why he responded that way. And the other guy came on into the conversation a little late, and he's like, what? I said the same thing to him, and he said, yeah, I'll take it right now. And I said, why? And he says, I have fun every day. No matter what, I have fun every day. And he's like that. He's just a very optimistic, positive guy, sees beauty in everything he's doing, doesn't really, he's got a solid family, I believe, and they live close to the earth, and every day is Christmas for this guy. And I really enjoy that guy too. And that's the difference. That's why I said, man, I'll take it right now. Yeah. Now, if I was going to be an invalid for the last 100 years, that doesn't sound so good. But I'm hoping for the best, right? So anyway, that's something to think about, because I think as we program our minds, as what we think in our minds, I think our regenerative nature is going to respond. And if we're telling ourselves, hey, we got to take care of this because we're going to 200, the cells say, oh, I'm going to have to regenerate, 4 or 5 of these things because he's planning on going to 200. We're okay with that. And I can't prove any of this, and I'm not even saying, oh, it's true because I can feel it. I'm just saying, what if? And couple it with some of the things we've seen over the last couple of years, and the surety we have in some of the processes that we've gone through in homesteading. Maybe I'm connecting dots that aren't there, but I like it. And I'm going for 2. And I may change that. I may go 250, because let's say you're 175 and you're saying, ooh, I'm getting used to this. Not to say, like we believe in an afterlife with very little data to back it up. And then we believe that we're only going to, maybe that's a bad corollary right there. Strike that one from the record. All right. So with soils and regeneration, I think it's good to establish what is in the soil in a natural form. Can we create super soils? Do we want to create super soils? Or is the creation good enough? I would say the one thing that I got today from all of these people that I listened to, and I listened to Roots and Refuge, excellent teacher she is. She really is a good teacher. I have no complaints with Roots and Refuge. She was talking about trellising in the garden, and I think you should listen to that. It was really neat. It's the second time I've listened to it. You know how when you're listening to stuff on YouTube, it brings you stuff that's, common to it. And I just put it on autoplay while I'm working, and I'm listening to one after another after another. And it really got me psyched for this spring. I love gardening. I love being in the garden. I love weeding, all of that stuff. I like doing it. And I like when I love trellising, making trellises. Love to go out and see stuff climbing, and I love to go out in the garden and grab a tomato or little Yellow tomatoes, so good. Eating a cucumber, oh, that is just so good. So I love gardening. I really do. I don't spend as much time as I plan to, but I would really, if I did not have livestock, I would have a much more intricate live garden, a lot of vertical integration in the garden, or a lot of vertical trellising. I would love to do that. I've done some, but I'd like to do a lot more. I'm really into irrigation systems. I just really love watching them make it rain. Um, so, and not just growing stuff. It's sort of my little moniker, places and spaces. You're creating a place or a space that is a unique place, by the life that's there. But it all begins with the soil. All begins with the soil. So the antithesis to the way that we are doing things is to do it with just the fertilizer way. And that's doable too. I'm not interested in that as much. That doesn't really blow my skirt up. Like when I think that my soils are getting better with time, the input of the sunlight and the oxygen and the organic material that's in it is actually increasing. I really like that whole notion of regeneration. So one of the things that we do here is we're using flora and fauna. All right. So flora being the plants, fauna being the animals. Right. They were not created to be in separate spaces. They were created to be together. Right. Flora and fauna. I mean, I think that's pretty obvious if you look into the natural world. Right. And in the natural world, things have a tendency to stay in balance. Right. But when we're doing 3 rows of peas, that's a little bit out of balance, I think. And so we have to just be cognizant of that. And usually an out of balance situation is going to cause a reaction of the environment. It's going to cause that. So when we're going into this, we have to be cognizant of why we're setting something up that's not exactly natural. We want to stay as close to it as we can, not exactly natural. And why all of a sudden do we get squash bugs? Why all of a sudden do we get potato bugs? This, that, and the other thing. And usually it's because we are out of balance and we're creating an out of balance situation. I wonder if Jill, if you listen to me, can you get a handle on that dog in the front yard? It's been going on for a long time. All right. So we have 2 big gardens on this place. And one of them is the one that's just to the east of the butcher shop. And that is where the old people had their garden. And the old people, I don't know how far it goes back, but the barn was built in 1900 and the chicken house was shortly after that. And it's just to the east of what was the chicken house, which is now the butcher shop. We used some of the foundation from the old chicken house to build the butcher shop in. And so it's been there for a long time. So there's a lot of old things there. When we bought the place, there was equipment that was there. There was old equipment that was just kind of there. They had burned stuff there. There was a lot of garbage there. This farm had been neglected for a lot of years, and about the only farming that went on here was area farmers would cut the hay off of it, but they never put anything back, and there was no grazing going on here. So it was being systematically taken. And if the owners didn't know or they didn't really care, then you can see why that would happen. But the good news is there was never any petrochemical fertilizer used on it since probably the 80s. Probably is we got it in '04, but the old guy lived here before us for about 15 years, and then before them, they didn't farm it either. They worked in town. They were the sons or the son of the man who built this farm. And his name was Ben Brinks. He built this house. So and that's is relevant because a lot of you are going to be on soil that you don't know anything about. And I've heard people say, I don't even know if I'd want to grow anything in this soil because who knows what. But that's the nature of regeneration, is you can regenerate it in a way that would be safe, and you can grow things in it that would be non-toxic to you. Now, I'm not saying that if it was a toxic waste dump that it can be done. That might be a bridge too far, but I think you know what I'm saying. Most soils that you're going to come across are not going to be all that toxic. I may get some input here to tell me different, but this is about where I'm at. Okay, so let's see, where do we want to begin? There was so much information that I came across today. You can just listen to it over, and there's so much stuff, and there's a bunch of different methods that people give. There's one guy, some of the permaculture people are not necessarily animal people. And this one guy I listened to, he says, oh, you can do it with beans, let the weeds grow and plant beans in it. Even if it's just sand, in about 5 months, you're going to have beautiful soil. That's what he said. He seemed to be able to back it up. Where I'm at, I don't know if I could do that, but I haven't exactly tried that. But I will tell you what we have done. I will talk to you about the things that I have done, and I can report to you on the effectiveness of it. So we have an area behind the barn. The farmers that would have been farming here when they were milking 10 cows and doing a little bit of row cropping and cutting hay, they were subsistence farmers. And this is the guy, Ben Brinks. He would have called that area his dry lot. So when he had cows that he was drying off, which means he wasn't going to milk them anymore because they were at the stage where they had a calf in them. And for about 3 months, right before they calf, you do not want to be milking them so that the nutrient can be going to that calf. Very important. I'm not saying that they do it like that now, but that's how we do it because we want our calves to come out really healthy. That dry lot was a place where when they cleaned the milking barn out, they just took it out there and made a pile of manure, just a pile. And when we got here, there was a great big pile out there, and the cows would stand up on top of it, and all around the pile was sand. And I mean sand. I mean sand like in a sandbox. Like you pick it up, there's nothing there, just sand, just silica. And the weeds that grew in there wasn't many of them. There just wasn't much growing in there. There was a lot of moss in there. There was a lot of lichen, and this is in bright sun. And so that seemed to be unacceptable, but I had no clue what to do out there. And a guy came into my life, and he was a trucker, but he had grown up on farms, and he says, "Oh, you need to get that turned over and get something planted on it." And I said, "Turned over?" And he said, "Yeah, this right here, this implement you have right here, this is a mold board plow. This goes to your tractor, and if you put it on there, I'll show you how to make it work." I said, "Okay." I put it on. I start pulling that thing through, and it's turning over 2 rows at a time. And underneath there's some really vicious looking clay. It was red, and then under that it was yellow, and then on top of that it's sand, right? And it not fertile looking stuff, definitely clay. And he says, okay, keep doing that. And then he says, then this pile here of manure, you're going to want to spread that out there. So, like, how do I do that? He says, well, get this spreader going here. Like, the spreader was not going to work. It was too beat up, just rusted to pieces. So I just took scoops out and dropped them, and the field was completely plowed. And then I went over it with a thing called a disc, and it seemed to put the corners down. And when I got done, it actually looked pretty good. It looked really good. And he says, okay, now you're going to want to get out there and plant that with rye. I dutifully went down to the co-op, got a bag of rye and a little organ grinder spreader, went out there and spread a bag of rye, reported back to him what I did. He says, okay, now you got to just kind of get it turned under a little bit. So drag a bed spring over it. Bed spring? Yeah, bed spring. Okay, I got a bed spring. And you remember how beds used to be? There was this spring, and then there was a mattress on top of it. And there was an old one here, and I dragged it over it. And then I modified it to make it better. And all those seeds were kind of covered up, or some of them. Birds came in and ate a bunch of them too. But in a few days, or maybe a week, there was green sprouts everywhere. Wow. And then before long, there was lush green grass this high. And it was beautiful. I mean, you'd want to take a handful of it and just bite it off, like just suck the juice out of it. Ryegrass. It was beautiful. And I was like, I did that? He's like, yeah, you want to be systematic about that and keep doing that. Right? So I did that. And then I went to a Small Farms Conference, and I sat in on a class about doing that. And they said, oh, yeah, you can do other things too, depending on what time of the year it is, right? So rye, you guys know, rye is my go-to. I like to plant rye all the time. But I also am intrigued when I see plumes out there of, daikon radish plumes. They look like tobacco leaves. They're just huge. And, big turnips like this big. It's just phenomenal, the stuff that will grow. And so I mix it up with other things. And that particular field, we used to grow stuff on it and then put pigs on it. And we'd grow it and then have another load of pigs that we'd put on it. But it was sort of like, well, then you have to take them off. And so how do you do that? And we weren't that proficient at that. So that area is on the west side of the barn. And I only keep cows over there now. I do not have pigs over there. And it's just because I don't. I have my cows over there, and it's a good field for them. It connects to the milk house. It connects to the loafing area. And so I really don't want pigs there. I like to keep things a little bit separate here and there. So anyway, it's just cows there now. And what I do is I will plow it up again and plant things in there for the cows, forages for the cows. And I can tell you that soil out there has turned from sand, blow sand, it's turned into rich soil. And the soil, to give you an example, the soil is sprouting weed seed out of it that we have not seen on this farm, right? So there's different species of weed that's coming up. Like, where did that come from? That hasn't been here in 18 years, and all of a sudden, there it is. So why does that happen? I would have to surmise that at the time that they started using that as a dry lot, and it would just be cows on it, and they beat it up, and it erodes, everything washes out of it. It's on a slope, everything washes out, and it's kind of interesting. At the lower part of it, it is just muck, right? So it's all the organic material is washed out of it and flowed down to the bottom. And one of these days I'm going to actually dig it out so we can let water go down there, but it doesn't have to take everything down with it. And I can take that stuff and put it on the top part of the field. But the soil and the nutrient in that soil and the biological life in that soil has gone from 0 to hero in a fairly short period of time. I would say it's been in good shape for a good 5 years. No, longer than that. A good 10 years now. It's good. You could grow anything you want out there. So I grow a lot of turnips out there. I grow field peas. Cows like field peas in the spring. But mostly rye. It seems to work really good. And I did attempt to put it back into grass. So I got a mix, and I put it out. And then we had super dry weather. And as soon as it rained, the weeds popped up first. But all that seed that I had planted came up underneath. So this coming spring, it could be pretty interesting to see what's come up. I planted Timothy grass. I planted orchard grass, some alfalfa. Alfalfa is hard to get going, but then it's hard to kill once it gets going, and it propagates itself. On several other things, cow peas, I think, in it, and several other things. So it should be interesting to see what happens. But that is a method to do that. That is a method to bring your fertility up. Okay, and we're at 9:07. I am going to go through the biochar making process. But let me just real quick tell you why this product becomes a component to help you to build great soils quicker. Why? Why is that? Why does charcoal, this is an inert substance. There's nothing in this. There's no smell to it. There's no taste to it. I'm not going to eat any now. It'll turn your teeth black, but I've eaten it before. There's nothing here. It's just carbon. So why does this enhance the soil's fertility is the question. And I've read several books. And one of the books that I read, it was written by a guy that I met. And I asked him, so have you ever been in this production-wise? And, do you use it and stuff? And he's like, no, I just read books. So he wrote a book on it, but he didn't actually use the stuff. And we've used it, and we've had really good luck with it. And we don't exactly know why, but I find solace in looking to nature. So what happens in nature? You have forests that get a little overgrown, and there's a lot of deadfall in there, and it gets kind of dry, and then you have heat lightning, you have a forest fire. When the forest fire is burning really hot, a lot of times, I've seen this out west, they burn so hot, get this, that they put themselves out. They burn so hot that they put themselves out. Why? Because they have no oxygen. It creates an oxygen depleted environment. And you go into these they're like haunted forests where the trees are there, but all the bark is burned off of them. They're dead, but they're still standing. And you kind of wonder, gee, I wonder why this didn't burn. And was it because it was green? No. A tree is living on the outside, but on the inside, it's just wood. It actually is quite dead on the inside. The life of a tree is on the outside, That's where everything's moving up and down, and in the tips, and in the branches, there's life. So it happens in nature, and you have all this charcoal. Everywhere there's charcoal. And The animals walk through it, crush it, they eat it. Animals eat charcoal, believe it or not. And I'm going to give you examples of that as we go along. But what does this do? And the explanation that I've gotten that makes sense to me, if you go into some of the books, some of the publications that are out there about biochar, they have pictures taken through a microscope. And what this is extremely porous. And it's also extremely dry. And so if you submerge this in water, it will become waterlogged. And then if you try to dry it out, it's so porous, there's so many little compartments in there, it's difficult to dry it out once you get it wet, right? And we've had that happen before, where this stuff will actually catch fire, and then if you don't do something about it, you will have nothing but ash there if you just let it burn, if you don't put it out. So once you put water on it, then it gets kind of heavy because it's waterlogged. And if you're selling it, are you really selling biochar, or are you selling water? You know, so you have to be careful with that. And then we say, okay, let's dry this out. We'll put it in some sort of container, and we'll put black plastic over it. And it takes a long time to dry it out, if you ever can. I mean, there'll be parts of it on the inside that just never dry. So that is one of the characteristics of biochar that makes it usable in soils, is that it will retain moisture. That's one of the things. That's one that I know about. Okay. There's a couple that I don't know about, but I can tell you what I've seen. The other one is, when you look at that under a microscope, it resembles like a honeycomb. And if you think about a honeycomb, because of the shape of it and the intricacies of the openings and closings, there is a lot of surface area on a honeycomb, right? I mean, there's structure there, but there's a lot of surface area. If this were solid, like a solid chunk of copper, the only surface area that you have is on the outside of it. But this is so porous that there is surface area throughout it. And that is the beauty of it. So what does it become? It becomes an apartment building for microbiology. You know, once there's moisture in it, it becomes a habitable place for microbiology. And they say, hey, come on, we got to, you know, they squat in it. They get in there and they do their thing. You got the amoeba family living in there. You've got the nematode family in there. You've got the bacteria family in there, and they all kind of live together, and some of them eat each other, and then they manure stuff out. And so you get all kinds of things going on inside that biochar. And like I said, if we had a coffee can full of rich soil and we totally killed it, and then we took just a little bit of, we have all this dead soil, and then we take a little bit of rich live soil and put it in there, the life will regenerate through the entire medium, right? So if we take some of this and we inoculate it, right? We inoculate it with something that's rich in microbiology. It could be in a fluid form. It could be in a dust form. Depending on how we're going to apply it, we're propagating the microbiology that's all around us, that's necessary for life, right into this. And once it's in there, it's in there. It's in there and it's protected. So we could inoculate this and then we can leave it in the sun. No big deal. There's plenty of water in there, you know, it'll sit there for a few days and then it'll rain on it, you know. and it'll suck up some more water. And the little guys that are living in there, they're like having a good time. Their lives aren't threatened by a little bit of drought. So those are two of the things that I know of, just by handling this, just by looking at it under the microscope, and just by, I know it. You can handle this, and you can know that. You can submerge this underwater and leave it there, leave a rock on top of it, come out the next day, and it won't float. Why? Because it's waterlogged. And you take it out, and it's heavy. It's full of water, and you know it. So those are two things I know about. There's something that I don't know. Like, I don't understand about electrical charges, and I hear about that. I hear that soil is energy, right? The permaculture people say that. And energy attracts energy. So that's as far as I'm going to go on that, because I just don't know. But I believe that what they're saying is this will attract energy. Okay? I don't know. I'm going to just leave it there. But I will tell you one thing that I know, and I saw it today. My son and daughter-in-law came over. This pile of biochar right here, I brought it in the house because he's a connoisseur of biochar, as I am. There's good biochars and there's bad biochars. And when you get good biochars, you know it. It's got a certain shininess to it, and it's got a little ring to it, We use hardwood, nothing but hardwood to make it. Softwood biochar does not seem to be effective, nearly as effective as hardwood. And the authors say that. That's another thing I can't prove, but I will tell you this. And I actually made a video today. I made a video yesterday showing the retort burning, going full tilt. And then I made another one today of it after being unloaded. So the retort is broken down. So I could show you what it looks like when it's broken down and being prepared to be reloaded. And in that video, I said, there's a strange characteristic of biochar is if you have biochar, like I did today, I brought this up on a paper towel, or I brought it up in my hands, and then I ripped off the paper towel and I put it on the dinner table, and I put this biochar right on it, and I didn't have a problem with that. And not a problem at all. I mean, it's clean. It's attractive. I cannot explain it. But in the video, I said, you put some of that on the table and you have friends come over, you don't say anything to them about it, and before long, you will have people with it in their hand. And not only will they have it in their hand, they will have it up to their face. Now, how many things do you pick up? Let's say you pick up a fishing lure, you pick it up, you look at it right out here. Do you put it up to your face? You smell it? You put it near your mouth, lick it, taste it, see what that tastes like? Do you do that? You just don't do that. Or if there was Play-Doh sitting on, because there was Play-Doh sitting on the table too. And my daughter-in-law and my son are sitting at the table and we're having a conversation. And I'm watching her. She doesn't know I made this video. I'm watching her. She's got it in her hands. She's looking at it. She's smelling it. I didn't see her taste it, but I did see her crushing some up and saying, hey, this would make some really good eyeliner. And then she gave it to Rachel. Rachel went in the bathroom and did eyelining with it. I'm not kidding. And I even said to her, did you see my video from earlier today? She said, no. I said, I rest my case. I said, when you watch it, you'll see. But that's something about biochar. People are drawn to it. I don't really know why, but I even find that I brought this in to show you, and I've picked it up several times. I seem to don't mind holding it. And every time that we make a burn, that we do a burn, I'm excited to see the biochar. I really am. The biochar that we did today, we're doing a burn as we speak. We had a beef skull with horns on it. I said, put that in there. Put that in there. So the boys are like, really? I said, yeah. Wait till you see what you get. And when you have boys doing this, like they get into it, they load it, they really get into it, making biochar. And I said, oh yeah, you can biochar all kinds of things. Really? Yeah. So my second two boys, my second oldest and third oldest, when they were doing this years ago, a neighbor stopped by and he said, hey, are you boys interested in a beaver? And they were like, yeah, I guess, because they were skinning everything they could get their hands on. He says, I accidentally just hit one on the road down there. And so they went down there and they got it. They went down on their bikes, got this beaver, brought it home. I think they were going to eat it, but they decided not to. Its guts were squished, I guess. I think that was it. I don't know. But they never did skin it, and it got stinky, and they were making biochar, and they said, hey, I bet we could biochar this beaver. They biocharred a beaver. They really did. They biocharred chickens, dead chickens, all kinds of bones, and then they would just experiment with different things that they'd find. Anything that's carbon based, you can take the distillates out of it and you'll have nothing left but carbon when it's done. I mean, you could do this to anything big though. Like if you were try to do, say, a thick piece of meat, like I don't know, like a roast or something. Although the burner that we have now is a Generation 5. We just burned it for the first time Sunday or Saturday, and we did not know how it was going to burn. Actually, it's a way slightly different. Well, no, it's a way different design. It's the principles of it are completely different. By the way, I have this, and if I can draw on this, and I'm going to get smart about that. And when we start talking about how to make biochar, I'm going to draw up for you here on this little screen right here. It'll be where my face is now, how to build a retort, because it's something that everybody can do if they would like to. But that's biochar. Biochar is a deep subject. We use it as a soil amendment. It's not an amendment, I shouldn't say. An amendment would be if you are short, you're lacking, let's say, cobalt. You would amend with cobalt. The soil doesn't naturally have charcoal in it. Well, maybe it does though in a forest fire area, right? Maybe. I figure. All right, Vindicti's got some. Biochar surface is negatively charged, so it attracts positive people. All right, I like that. I'll go with that. I'll go with that because I know I have some negative people in my life, right? But I will. Maybe we should just use it as a, like walk over to somebody and throw them a chunk of biochar. If they jump away, then you'll know. Stay back. Stay back. Okay. All right. I'm hour and a half, so I'm gonna cut her off here. But I'd like to go back and read some of y'all's input. Wow. Wow. I've been yakking, haven't I? Uh-oh. It's way back. Okay, Vindicti's got a good point there. Found us. Okay. John Bates, all right, saying hello. Found a scorpion. Sean found a scorpion in the shop last week. Always shake out your sleeping bag. Yeah. Was looking at the price of buying biochar in bulk. It seems so crazy cheap that it'd be hard to make a profit without doing in massive scale. Can you remind me about that tomorrow? Because that's a deep subject right there. I looked at it yesterday online just for the fun of it because some guy has approached us and wants it. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know. Because the amount of effort that goes into it, I'm not going to sell it for $149 a cubic yard. I've seen it like that. But there's more to the story there. There's way more to the story. All right, Bryce is with us. Bryce might know a lot about biochar. I don't know, because it's really kind of in his wheelhouse. Belva Rockwell's with us. Hello, Belva. Vindicti, some crazy biologists are now spraying bacteria and fungi using drones to regenerate soil after they kill it and load it with fertilizers. Yeah. Inga says, I truly question if we're living longer. I remember people living to 100 in my teens. Hardly hear of that anymore. Well, you heard about it tonight. You heard about 200 tonight. USA Patriot, 1791. Ohio Governor DeWine signed SB 215 constitutional carry today, and it goes into effect in 90 days. I suppose I should be really happy about that, but that indicates that we need a law to back up the Second Amendment. The rights of the citizens to own and bear arms shall not be infringed. If I want to carry it concealed, that is covered by the Second Amendment, in my opinion. And I don't like, like Right to Farm Act and all that stuff. We have that under the Fifth Amendment. So that's not the subject we're talking about tonight, so I'm just going to leave it right there. Okay, the ones that live to 100 seem to live clean off the land and stayed active. They stayed away from man-made junk. Yeah. I think the reason a lot of, it's not just one thing. It's not just because I empower myself by my thought to live to 200 that I'm going to live to 200. I have to, leave a lot of the Mountain Dews and, the chocolate bonbons and stuff on the shelf. And, I eat stuff once in a while and I say, gee, that tastes good. But that's the nature of the food industry, is to fool your body into thinking that it tastes good. The design of this system is, I eat something and it tastes good, then I will continue to eat it, and that hopefully is what my body needs. That's why, if there was such a thing as caveman, they didn't say, well, let's just eat rocks. It doesn't taste good, so you eat it, it would just give you a heavy feeling. I don't know, I get a heavy feeling when I eat rocks, but when I eat this, I feel good. So, but they fool you with different things into eating bad stuff. Okay, Vindicti says, I think there may be bifurcation. I think there may be bifurcation, Inga. Some people will start to live longer as they disconnect from the cities, and others start to die younger as they become dependent on the cities for everything. Hey, I think people have taken certain medications lately, and at the time they take it, they're told that, hey, this is going to make you live longer. I think we got BS'd on that too. I do, because if what they were saying was true, we should have had, dropping like flies this fall, and I don't think that happened, right? But in their minds, when they research it, they hear things like this doctor out of the United Kingdom that has said, if you took that shot, you just shortened your life by 20 years. And they hear that and they're like, oh. And then they make peace with it and say, well, better I made it to 60 than nothing, you know. And they start thinking that way. I don't know. All right, fluoride, the unregulated drug, because you may drink it all the water you want. Yeah. Nancy's saying, I can only drink UV treated water. Get hives from regular tap water. How do you do with, like, if you find a really good spring someplace? If you can find springs in your neck of the woods. Berkey, don't leave home without it. Berkey being a filtration device. We have one too. I tried my sister's Berkey. It didn't work unless she needs certain filter. Okay. I don't know if how to what micron they will filter out. I really don't know. Berkey prices are way up. Need to figure out how to replace my carbon filters with biochar instead. Huh. Well, carbon filters would be carbon, you know, it would be biochar. Biochar, I think, it differs from activated charcoal. Activated charcoal is they hit it with steam and it just blows it into really small pieces. But I think it's all kind of the same. You can make biochar in an open campfire, but you're not going to get the same yield as you would if you did it in a retort. Okay, can you purify water without buying a Berkey? Can you make your own? I think you can. I think you can take biochar. It'd be real interesting, and put it in a column, like a piece of PVC pipe, and then pour water down through it. That'd be interesting. See what happens. There are videos on YouTube to make one. If you leave water out in the sun in a glass jar for 12 to 24 hours, the UV purifies it, so I have read. Bryce says, my neighbor told me the other day he don't even buy green bananas anymore. Huh. Is there something I need to know here about green bananas? I don't know. I love bananas, but I don't like green ones. I think they give you the scoots. Exactly my question. Can you use biochar or charcoal to filter with layers of sand and stone? I don't know. Honestly, Inga, I don't know, but maybe you should, you know, be the procurer of that knowledge and try it. The black and white for fluoride. I don't know what that means. Okay, and Inga's heard that about the sun. I bought a. See, now shouldn't we know this? I mean, shouldn't this information just be like, oh, the Earth is round? You know, shouldn't it just be there in our minds? But we don't. It's sort of like, well, this one says, and Whoopi Goldberg says, and you know, it should be settled. It should be settled. Like global warming, that's settled, right? That's the one thing that they say to you when you questioned it in a big group of global warming people. They'll say, hey, shut up. It's settled science. Okay, TSX 32114. Sun exposure negates the chlorine. Huh. Vindicti, do you start your seeds early indoors? We start them in the greenhouse. Not this early. Not this early. No point to it. No point. Inga, you can in a pipe, but put cotton over the end and use biochar or sand. Put water on the sand side and let it drain out into the bucket. But how do you test that for, purities. How would you go about that testing part?